Bill Maher is so close to being red-pilled, it hurts. Now, Maher is a progressive comedian, and that usually means he avoids telling jokes that paint the left in an unflattering light. His liberal peers won't lay a glove on President Joe Biden, for example, no matter how many times the commander-in-chief shows his age.
Let's go lick the world.
We cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem and Joan Shengang. I'm going to pronounce Shanga Kawawa.
Nope, not a finger of that glove. Now, to be fair, Maher doesn't go there that often either. He actually thinks Biden isn't as lost as all those countless audio clips are suggesting. But Maher does torch the woke mind virus early and often.
Democrats sometimes can take it too far, or I would categorize liberal as different than woke. Woke, which started out as a good thing, alert to injustice, who could be against that, but it became sort of an eye roll because they love diversity except of ideas. And that's not really where we should be. I mean, they have a trail of very bad ideas, I would think, in wokeness. Like,
how do you define wokeness? Because I hear people use the term all the time, and it means something different to everybody.
Well, again, I think it's this collection of ideas that are not building on liberalism, but very often undoing it. I mean, 5 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was not a controversial figure among liberals. We liked him. Now they take his name off schools and tear down his statues. Really? Lincoln isn't good enough for you?
Even better, he opens up his Club Random podcast to right-leaning voices, likely learning a thing or two along the way. This week, he did it again with guest Riley Gaines. Now, if you don't know that name, she's the collegiate swimmer who tied, famously, trans swimmer Leah Thomas at a critical meet. Now, Riley personally suffered from competing against a biological male who now identifies as a female, and she's not staying silent on it. That earned her an invitation on Maher's show, and he also gave Maher an excuse to make fun of her right-leaning views. She was a pretty good sport about it, I have to say, and I think Maher, otherwise, was a pretty gracious host. Maher also heard her out, agreed with a lot of her takes on gender issues, and once again proved he wasn't going to be bowing down to the woke mob. Case in point, how Woke Nation insists trans women should compete against biological women in sports. Maher broached that scorching hot-button issue with Gaines early and often.
I mean, we are so through the looking glass on just this whole issue of pretending that male and female athletes are somehow peers. They're not. I mean, I may have talked about this on this podcast before, but it just obsesses me because it's my refutation to the people who say, oh, Bill, when you go on about wokeness, it's just a little fringe. It's not a fringe. It's not just a few people, because this was in the Atlantic. That's one of a very major publication, a very mainstream major publication, very respected. And they printed an article, and the title of the article was, Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense. But it does. And there was sentences in this article that you would swear this is just a parody in The Onion. We don't know why. We don't know if men are stronger than women, but if they are, we'd have to find out if it's because of nature or because of socialization. Yeah, that's what it is. They're trying to put through this idea that these differences are not innate.
Right.
It's very similar to what's going on with, gender.
Now, I don't know if you remember this, but a few months back, Gaines spoke at a California college. She was talking about the same issue she was talking about with Bill Maher. And she actually had to barricade herself in a room for 3 hours after speaking at the college. Trans rights activists were chasing her around, they hit her at times, and they forced her into that room. And she had to wait for a safe escort to get out of there. She even tweeted about the incident and had some damning video to back up her story. Here's what she said at the time. The prisoners are running the asylum at SFSU. I was ambushed and physically hit twice by a man. This is proof that women need sex-protected spaces. Now, if you didn't hear that story, well, it's really not your fault because the media didn't give it much coverage because it made her look good and it made the trans rights protesters look terrible. Again, a lot of media bias is not what you see, but what you don't see. Of course, Maher began their conversation on these really tough issues with a funny adult angle. Had Gaines seen Thomas's genitalia in the locker room? Well, she joked her way around the issue time and time again, and Maher kept pressing because he is a comedian and he is a curmudgeon too, but she just basically danced around it as much as possible. But eventually Maher took her side when it came to trans women in sports.
I mean, we are so through the looking glass on just this whole issue of pretending that male and female athletes are somehow peers. They're not. I mean, I may have talked about this on this podcast before, but it just obsesses me because it's my refutation to the people who say, oh, Bill, when you go on about wokeness, it's just a little fringe. It's not a fringe. It's not just a few people, because this was in the Atlantic. That's one of a very major publication, a very mainstream major publication, very respected. And they printed an article, and the title of the article was, Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense. But it does. And there was sentences in this article that you would swear this is just a parody in The Onion. We don't know why. We don't know if men are stronger than women, but if they are, we'd have to find out if it's because of nature or because of socialization. Yeah, that's what it is. They're trying to put through this idea that these differences are not innate.
Right.
It's very similar to what's going on with, gender.
Now, if you missed that article from The Atlantic, here's a key section. There are a lot of key sections, but I think this one really does capture it. This is what the article said. Decades of research have shown that sex is far more complex than we may think. And though sex differences in sports show advantages for men, researchers today still don't know how much of this to attribute to biological difference versus the lack of support provided to women athletes to reach their highest potential. Wow, this is the science, folks. This is the science. Riley added her own clarity to the madness.
We should ask the Atlantic if we should separate the Paralympics versus the Olympics, or if we should have heavyweight boxers competing against featherweights. Are we fat shaming Are we fat shaming the heavyweights?
Right.
No, we do this for a reason.
Yes, it's.
Yeah, I mean that's the craziest thing I've literally ever heard. I mean, same thing. You don't have 18 and unders competing against 12 and unders, right? I mean, these divisions that we have in sports, they're there for safety or for fairness.
But Maher still can't connect all the dots. Also can't understand that the real threat that woke poses is connected directly to the political situation. He still promotes Democrats and skewers the GOP, especially Donald Trump. He hates Donald Trump. The latter is completely understandable, but when you listen to Maher long enough, it's pretty clear he still relies on the corrupt news media to flesh out a lot of his opinions. And that's why I guarantee he'll be voting for Biden in 2024, even if the president can't put two words together anymore. Doesn't matter. He's got Maher's vote. Now, again, in Maher's defense, he still offers a lot of wit and is also a valuable service to his country. And I don't say that loosely. How many interviewers would even accept Riley Gaines in their studio and talk to her and treat her with respect and listen to her? I guarantee if any interviewer did, they would absolutely skewer her. They would run roughshod over her, attack her, not let her get a word in edgewise. They would do everything they possibly could to make her look badly. Did Maher do that? Oh no, he heard her out. Actually agreed with her on a few big issues, and he also let his left-leaning fans hear a side of the story they probably won't get from the mainstream media. Maher is far from perfect. What comedian is at this point? But until that red pill moment finally gets here, he's still helping his country in his own inimitable way.